Hey here.
Yay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome in, y'all. Happy Monday. We're just going to give it a few more seconds while y'all get situated. Maybe grab something to write some notes down. We have lots of applications to take away from our 30-minute Monday today, and we're so excited that y'all are here.
Yes. Welcome, everyone.
Awesome. Well, hello again. And like I said, happy Monday, everyone. Thank you all for joining us here on our MPI Academy 30-minute Monday. We have an exciting topic over mental health awareness and also just how we can handle that for ourselves and recognize it in others in our crazy dynamic industry. I'm Lexi Quilty with the MPI Academy. It's good to see some familiar faces. And before we kick it off today, I just want to do a few quick housekeeping notes. So hang on with me for this next minute. We do want y'all to stay engaged with us today. So go ahead, let us know where you are from in the chat, what your name is, and also if you're comfortable, please feel free to turn on your camera. If at any point you have a question during our time today, go ahead, put that in the chat. We'll answer those in between questions. And of course, if we have time at the end, we welcome any and all questions there. This is being recorded, so if you would like to go back and rewatch it or recommend it to anyone, you can see it on our MPI Academy on-demand page within the next 24 hours. And in addition to that, if you are joining for a clock hour today, you can take the evaluation, which will be available to you at the end of the 30-minute Monday. That's just where you went in and registered and logged in to today's webinar. So go ahead, take that first, and then you can self-report to the EIC. So I'm going to turn it over to our two wonderful panelists, let them introduce themselves, and we are going to kick it off.
So hi, everyone. I'm Famari, and I'm based in Miami. I am a recovering hotelier and meeting planner, now turned certified professional coach.
Hi, and I'm Rochelle Stone. I like to say I'm a recovering DMC professional and now turned professional certified coach. And I'm based in the Didena and Tampa area of Florida.
Thank you both. I know we have our Floridians on the call today, so maybe y'all know some people who are from there as well. And we're just so excited that you're taking time out of your day to join us and talk about a super important topic. And that's not just going to end today after our call, but also continued at World Education Congress, if any of y'all are attending in Louisville in just 2 weeks from today. So I wanted to go ahead and kick off our conversation with just really defining what we're talking about today, which is mental health, because I know there's so many different ideas about this and also experiences. So let's just open up the floor. And I would love for y'all to explain a little bit more by definition and also just give a basis for what we'll be chatting about today.
Sure. Mara, you want me to take this? I'll take this opening one. Okay, great. So a lot of times when you hear mental health, people aren't really sure what you mean. And really, mental health is on a spectrum, and it's important to note that by definition, it's a state of well-being that involves your emotional, physiological, and your social actualization as an individual. And this impacts how we think, how we feel, how we behave, and it helps us cope with everyday life stresses. But it is on a spectrum. So to be mentally healthy, that's mental wellness. Within that spectrum, we have mental illness, we have mental wellness, we have mental fitness. So understanding each of those and where we can support our friends, our colleagues, our clients, our peers is important, and also where we need to reach out for help. We have 1 in 5 adults that are living through some sort of mental illness, which is brought on either by hereditary or biological or even from trauma or abuse. But regardless, as meeting professionals, that's above our pay grade to manage. So knowing what to look for and recognize and when to refer and what kind of help to give is really important. So, Vamari, would you add anything to that?
No, I think you covered it all. I think the biggest thing is to know that I think post-pandemic, the conversation's just gotten louder. And that's why we're hearing so much of it. People are actually speaking more about their personal experiences, which is also contributing to that loudness. And so a lot of us, especially in the meetings and events industry, always had the stress. You know, we work long hours, and so we've had that mental fatigue. It doesn't always mean that is mental illness, right? It just means that it could be your mental well-being that needs a check. And so that's what we're here to discuss. And I think that's where we wanted to ensure that you know the differences, because right now everything's being bucketed into mental health.
Awesome. Thank y'all both for setting that groundwork for us to go forward with, and really showcasing how it's not just for us, but those that we're working with around us too. And diving into our first question, can you share your perspective on the importance of addressing mental health in the events industry? Like you were saying, we're working crazy long days, we're going from event to event. So, considering these unique challenges that event professionals encounter, what can we address on that?
I can start with that, and then Rochelle, if you have anything to add, you know, so as we've mentioned, there are unique stressors to our industry with the deadlines, the long hours, high pressure situations. They a lot of the times will come up. Our industry will come up in the top 5 stressor industries, you know, around, and so a lot of that has to do with us being having to go from one thing to the other. Oftentimes we're working those long hours for just a couple of months, and then there's that downtime, and that could be a stressor for our brain. And so I would say that that's probably the unique difference when it comes to the industry: the long hours, the short deadlines, and then the high pressure situations, which often are compared to a firefighter.
Yeah, we are often between air traffic controller and police officer in the top 5 most stressful industries you can go into. And that's year after year, year after year. And to Vimari's point, because of the constant pivoting and changing that we have in our industry, stressors are an external event. Stress is an internal emotion. If we're not dealing with the internal stress, then it just builds up. And that's where we have a lot of physical and mental and emotional challenges, because we're not managing the stress in our body. In the meetings industry, those stressors, those external stressors, they never go away. One of them goes away and another one just drops in. Oh, this program's over. Let's go to that one. Sometimes stacked right on top of the other. And for a lot of people in the events industry, I know here in Florida, we did 70% of our business in the first 5 months of the year. And then we had a little bit of a gap. So it was always that push, 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 push. But our bodies can't handle that. That's the reality. We have to start listening to our bodies more.
That blows my mind that you said where we rank for the most stressful profession in between air traffic controller and also potentially police officer. To me, that is absolutely crazy, but it makes so much sense. So, managing mental health in these high pressure and dynamic fields like events is challenging. So, what strategies or practices do you recommend for event professionals to maintain their mental well being among all the other demands of work and even personal life, too?
Oh, there's so many. Where do we
There's
start?
so many. One thing I tell, so I teach a class at FAU, it's a certificate in meetings and events. And so what I tell my students there is be sure to take time in between events. So take time off. We were just speaking before getting on with Rochelle, saying, you know, she's going to take an extra day in Louisville to see the city. And that's so important to really just take time for ourselves in between events and in between, you know, travel and all of that, so that we have that time to decompress. And then there's the things that we could do daily, of course. Do you want to speak to those, Rochelle?
Well, I wanted to take it one step further in what you're saying. Is too often when we're doing a 3-day meeting, we're probably working 60, 70, 80 hours going up to it. And then the week of the event, we're not taking any prep time to prep ourselves. So I would say one of the things we could do is take a half a day or even a full day and just know your team has it under wraps. So your client will live for one day without you. So you can charge up your batteries and be ready for that meeting. Then when that 70-hour 3-day meeting is over, it's not enough just to take the weekend off. Take an extra day off. That sleep deficit you're in from burning the candle at both ends is still there. Rest, sleep, do nothing, read a book, lay by the pool, go for a hike, dance, swim, something other than what you do for work.
Yeah.
And we
I
have
think
been
a good question, Lexi, there in regards to, it went really fast. I think it's how do you go from back to back?
yes.
Yeah. So, I get it. Sometimes what we're saying is like, okay, that's great in a perfect world, right? And so there are things like Rochelle said that you can do in the midst of the program that will help you. One example is when we were at WEC in Mexico, I had a swim up room and I made it my point to go inside that swimming pool. I mean, I made sure that my hair was up here. I didn't touch my makeup, but for 15, 20 minutes, I was inside that pool, just, trying to relax for a few minutes. That's just an example of something that you can do, but really it's more so about working with your teams. And I know that a lot of your teams are still short. You're probably not fully,
Backed up.
back to normal. But whenever possible is ask yourself, what could I do so that I'm not back to back? Who can help me here? Because a lot of it is us as a high achiever. I'm a high achiever. Sometimes I don't delegate. Sometimes I don't ask for help. And so when I see that someone's working back to back, when I see that I'm working back to back, a lot of the times is things that I'm not doing, is boundaries I'm not placing in order to help me have that 15 minutes, that 30 minutes, that 1 hour, whatever it is, because sometimes it's impossible to have a full day. But finding that time. Do you have anything to add, Rochelle?
Yeah, give yourself some grace. It is tough. We know that. And saying I need 15 minutes is sometimes just enough to press the reset. Brene Brown talks about the difference between being in the weeds and being in overwhelm. And I think meeting planners and trip directors, on-site, hoteliers, all of you, when you have a program coming on or in operation, you are in the weeds. And that's where you're saying, Joe, can you please pick that up for me? Andy, can you please run the mailing list or the airport, whatever. You're constantly leaning on and reaching out. When you hit overwhelm, you can't do anything. You just have to stop. So recognizing when you're in the weeds and doing something about it before you get into overwhelm. Because when you're in overwhelm, you're no good to anybody. You just need to go walk around the building, leave your phone in the building just for 15, 20 minutes. But again, it's that resetting. It's that constant resetting. Make sure you get good rest. You have a favorite coffee that you travel with it, bring it with you. I actually travel with my own slippers. I can't stand walking in a hotel room barefoot or in socks. I want my slippers. So those things that keep you more comfortable while you're running a meeting, they're the creature comforts that make such a difference.
Wonderful advice, y'all. And I think the hard part is we always hear other people in industries or would really, really desire that we could have a full day or even an extended weekend, which would be amazing to recover, but those little moments and really taking advantage of it. And like you were saying, sometimes that's all we need. And Andy put a question in the chat that leads us perfectly into the next question I have for you. But the planners that sometimes there's the burnout and there's the stress, how can we encourage one another, whether it is from you being a leader to your group that you're leading and how you can encourage them to take time, or setting up your own boundaries then, or telling people like, hey, you know what? You've just came out of all these events. You need to take your PTO. You banked it all up. How can we encourage each other to make it through all these stressful situations and prioritize mental health and mental wellness?
I'll start.
Mhm.
Lead by example. If you're a leader and you're burning the candle at both ends, you're doing your team a huge disservice. That mentality that no one can do it as good as you, ask yourself, what evidence do you have? Too often, to Vamari's point, we're hyperachievers, we're pleasers, we're hyper vigilant, we want everything done perfectly, and we're the only ones that can do it that way. The reality is we have no evidence of that. So give yourself some grace. lead by example. One of the things I do is I make sure if we have a meeting blocked, if it's an hour meeting, I set it up for 50 minutes only. And when we get on that call, I let the other people on the call know, okay, I've got 50 minutes and that's it. I need those 10 minutes to reset. So I'm ready for my next meeting. Putting up, using out of office responses in your email. Hey, I'm working in a different time zone this week. My responses will be when I'm in my working hours, and you'll respond in your working hours. What else, Bamari? There's so many ways we can do this. It's
You know, a lot of it is our responsibility because, you know, we're the only ones that can set boundaries around our work, around what's expected of us, right? And it's not about being slackers, but not everything is an emergency. Not every email needs a response right away. And it takes training, guys. I am telling you that it takes, for me, it's like I try to shut down every single weekend. I don't work in events anymore, all 24/7. So I have that luxury. However, I am very cautious of the moment I get that little, oh, I want to check my emails, I tell myself no. I stop myself so that it's not just that one email, because then I'll just stay there for, I don't know, 30 minutes or whatever. So it's really having that self-control, those boundaries, and then communicating with your colleagues and just saying, hey, listen, I don't check my emails on Saturdays. That's my one day, or my Sunday. You know, the weekends, we work such and such hours. So weekends, when I'm off, when I'm not on an event, please respect them. I will not, you will not hear from me on the weekend, you know, or whatever day. So I just, you know, a lot of it is we want others to empathize, and I think that people have empathy has grown throughout the pandemic. People understand that we're all suffering from something, or that, you know, things are happening. But at the same time, if we're not, it's like what Rochelle was saying, if we're not leading by example, and if we're not placing our boundaries and taking care of ourselves, then we can't expect others to be the ones taking care of us.
Yeah, and Bamari, you brought up a really important word that I think needs to be stressed along with the boundaries. Communication. We expect others to read our minds. We have to tell people what we need. We have to tell people what our boundaries are. And too often we just expect people to understand it and know it. So when we're looking at that email at 7 o'clock at night, and we're in our brain, we're going, there's no way I'm answering that now. And we're feeling it in our body. Now we're annoyed for 20 minutes. Don't even look at it. Have that conversation in advance. Hey, I don't check my email at night. So yeah, communication is really key.
And I saw a question in there about boundaries. I think this answered it beautifully, because boundaries is a really scary word, but it shouldn't be, because it protects us so much. And also, once that's communicated, that sets the expectations for everybody else you're working with. And hopefully, it makes everything just smoother sailing. And just what y'all have been saying about communication, although that might seem like, oh, I don't want to tell my supervisor XYZ or the client that we're working with that I'm going to not be able to be reached during these hours, you will feel so much better if you do. So I know it can seem intimidating at first, but take that first step of communicating those boundaries. And then from there on out, hopefully it gets easier there. So amazing way to answer that question. I appreciate that, y'all. What about specific warning signs or indicators that event professionals should be aware of when it comes to their own mental health, or even that of their colleagues that we talked a little bit about?
You want to take that?
I can start. Absolutely. So there's, you know, as I said at the top, mental health is really on a spectrum from super healthy and fully mentally fit to mental illness. And I think the mental illness piece is, as professionals, we can do our clients, our peers, our colleagues the best service by getting educated and knowing what to look for. I've recently completed a mental health literacy course with Harvard Medical Center. It was the best 12 hours I ever spent, because I can only help my clients more. And I think hospitality professionals can benefit from the same sort of training. As professionals, if you're going to notice it in somebody else or yourself on the spectrum, it begins with I'm a little tired. I'm not sleeping so great. I'm putting some weight on. I'm craving sweets. I'm waking up in the middle of the night and I'm ruminating, or I'm starting to get back issues when I never did. It starts to impact you physically. When you're not managing the stress in your body, it starts to show up physically. And then mentally, we start to maybe a little brain fog, forgetfulness, not doing things as well as we used to, starting to be a little bit of that in the middle, not really committed to the outcome, but not actually, not in survival mode either, but you're not thriving anymore. So it really continues on a spectrum. You can tell when you're seeing somebody's having an anxiety attack or a panic attack. Those fall into the far end of the spectrum where they need professional help. So knowing and recognizing when you're seeing it in someone else or you're seeing it in yourself, asking for help. What else for Murray?
I think
With
feeling
the
stress all the time, like
sadness.
it's okay to feel stress here and there, right? Just like it's okay to feel sad when something sad happens, but not when it's constant. If you're constantly feeling stress, anxious about your work, negative, we start to speak negatively about our colleagues or our work or the surroundings. Those are all signs that we're getting to a burnout if we're not already burnt out. And so watching out for those signs is really important. Now, to Rochelle's point, there are people that suffer from anxiety attacks. That's not necessarily because of your stress at work. That could be a mental, imbalance that you might have or whatever. But in those cases, then you want to see a professional. I remember, I'll never forget, it was really early in my career. I was a supervisor at a front desk, and one of my front desk agents had a panic attack at the front desk in the middle of her shift. I had no idea what was happening. All of a sudden, she's just crying uncontrollably, right? All I could do was be empathetic at that moment and bring her to the back and ask someone to take her shift, and just try to calm her down. I had no idea what was happening. It wasn't until after that she told me that she suffered from panic attacks. She was on medication. She hadn't taken her medication. So as a leader, all I could do was just try to calm her, give her a safe space to be, and then recommend that she continue with whatever her medical treatment was. So there's a difference between high level stress and then an actual mental health concern.
Crisis, yeah. And to your point, Vamari, generally, if somebody has a panic attack or if they have an anxiety attack, if you have one, it happens sometimes. Generally, if you're going to have one, there is an indicator that you might have another one down the road. So it is important to make sure you're getting help. And the other thing you are seeking professional help. The other thing you brought up was a burnout. And I just want to bring this distinction up. The difference between burnout and depression. With depression, you're going to stop. You're going to turn off the phone. You're going to close the blinds. You're not going to answer the email, close the computer. You just shut down. With burnout, you will keep going until your body shuts down on you. And that is the thing that we really want you to avoid as meeting professionals, recognizing when you need to process some stress, you need to take a break and move in order to prevent yourself from going into burnout. Because planners, I've seen it so many times, and it's not pretty. It's so much easier to prevent burnout than it is to recover from it. And Vamari and I have both burnt out. We've both been through burnout, and it was a 2-year recovery for me.
Yeah, my last burnout took about 4 months, 5 months before I could get my brain back. And that was after being a coach. And that's because in the pandemic, I was so busy trying to help others and not processing my own stress and not helping myself and not stopping. And so, and because I don't feel my stress. I'm a high achiever. I want to work all the time.
That's pushing you.
It was pushing me. And so now I'm really cautious of taking breaks. I get nervous. I'm like, no way, I need to cut time off, so it's really about knowing yourself and knowing what your threshold is. Yeah.
And your boundaries.
Yeah, and your boundaries.
Respect your boundaries. Yeah.
Great, y'all. Thank you for sharing that. And it just makes it so real because unfortunately, this is still something that gets overlooked in our industry and not just here, but sometimes even in households we've grown up in or another line of work. And there's just the stigma that is put on it. So is there anything you hope to see for our industry that we can lead to either break down that stigma or offer resources or maybe help and support groups for people who are feeling this? And I seriously applaud both of y'all for saying it out loud because sometimes we don't want to admit that we've hit burnout, but it's happened. It's real. So any insight into that?
You want to,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I'm the one that I wear burnout like a neon sign around my neck. And I do that because I don't want others to go through what I did. Mine wasn't painful. I was lucky. I was like a frog in a pot of water. But learning afterwards that I burnt out was humiliating. And it took me a long time before I admitted it. So I understand the stigma. Yes, we're talking about things. Now it's time for us to start leaning in and taking action. Vimari and I are on a mission to get this industry mentally fit. Because when you're truly mentally fit, you have more capacity to manage your stress. You recognize it more, which is why we're running a session at WEC on teams and mental fitness in teams, because it starts here, right? We're talking to you about what's going on inside of you and boundaries and taking care of yourself. But in order to take care of the rest of the village, you need to know what you look for and you need to be healthy.
Yeah. So imagine if we're one person, we're all suffering from stress, anxiety, all that, all those things that are happening in our heads, so the voices in our head. Imagine if you're one person and now you're a team of 10. Now everyone's going through the same thing. So if you're not managing your stress properly, if you're not, if you don't, you're not respecting others' boundaries and you're not making sure that others respect your boundaries and all of that, then it's going to affect your team culture, your team dynamic. And so it all starts with us. And what can we do? We can really take a look at ourselves in the mirror. We can say, am I doing everything I can to protect my boundaries and my mental health and to take care of myself? Because if you're not doing it, no one else is going to do it for
Right.
you.
There's a question in the chat that I think is perfect for kind of wrapping this up. How do you regulate stress that comes from another person you're around a lot? Kelly, great question. Honestly, that is your stressor. That's the external stressor. And you're responsible for managing your stress internally. However, that's an opportunity to set a boundary with that person. What happens is in our brain, we now know mirror neurons. When that person is toxic, nasty, mean, just a jerk, it raises your negative attitude too. But that's part of being mentally fit, is that you're able to recognize that and instead turn the situation around. We can't really resolve it here for you right on this call, because I don't know if that's a leader or if it's a peer or if it's a client. Every one of those situations, you would have a different response for a toxic person around you or person bringing you stressors.
Awesome. Thank you both again. And just as we wrap up on our time here, if y'all have any closing thoughts that you want to share, as well as if you would like to drop your LinkedIn in the chat. So if anyone has more questions, they can connect with you further there, as well as seeing you at WEC, if anyone's in attendance to go check out their session.
Yeah. So, I want to say probably as we end is the exercise that we all talk about, the mindfulness practices, the taking vacations, all of that helps to prevent us from burning out, it helps us deal with our stressors. Stressors are a part of life. They're never going to go away. It's just a matter of how we handle them. What are the tools that we're utilizing to ensure that they're not going out of control? But, it is a part of life, and it's just a matter of us being able to take care of ourselves. And fitness, again, walks. I love to walk with my dogs. That's my stress in the middle of the day, taking a walk in the middle of the day. You're here now, you're investing in yourself, and you're learning more about it. So at the same time, you could shut off and maybe take a walk for 5 minutes, even if it's just around the block or down the street, whatever. Those things help. Anything from you, Rochelle?
There's too many to get through in 12 seconds.
Yeah.
But hopefully if you're at WEC, come join us at the session and come, we're both coaching at WEC this year too. So happy to sit down for 20 minutes with you in the coach's corner and help you a little bit through a challenge.
Absolutely. The coaching sessions are free, so just, but they book up quickly. So you guys have to go to the link and book them up.
Awesome. Thank you both so much again. And for everyone who's asked these amazing questions in the chat that we were able to speak to today. So we'll see y'all in just about 2 weeks, and y'all have a great rest of your week. Find some time, even if you're feeling good and not stressed this week, just go on a walk, maybe get some sun for a little bit. Take those 15 minutes. So thank you again, and we'll see you on our next webinar. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.